Welcome to the debate. Today, we're diving into really the heart of modern technical education. We're looking specifically at these new methods for rapidly developing comprehensive training materials. Think about that recent intensive cybersecurity program built for young competitors. Now, this program leaned heavily on generative AI tools, multiple LLMs, GitHub Copilot, automated scripting assistants, all really in the name of speed and scale. But this whole process raises a crucial question. Does the efficacy, the sheer pace of using GAI for cybersecurity curriculum development justify the, let's say, unique security, integrity, and intellectual property risks that seem kind of baked into LLM-assisted content creation? I believe that embracing this AI-assisted content creation isn't just an advantage. It's becoming an essential innovation. It's required for effective, streamlined delivery, especially in a fast-moving field like this.
And I'll be arguing the other side here, that relying on these powerful GAI tools, specifically for security curriculum, introduces critical and, frankly, unacceptable risks. These risks fundamentally undermine the reliability and, I'd say, the integrity of the educational material itself. When we're teaching defense, the need for verified security simply must outweigh the promise of unvetted speed.
Okay, so my position really rests on the results of this project, which I think demonstrate a necessary step, maybe an evolutionary step in educational technology. Look, the demand for cybersecurity expertise right now, it completely outstrips the ability of traditional methods to keep up. Utilizing Copilot and various LLM agents gave us a massive lift in content creation. It provided an AI-assisted creation engine that enables a truly streamlined workflow. And this level of efficiency allowed us to quickly build out a comprehensive curriculum, one that properly integrates theoretical knowledge with essential practical skills across platforms like Linux and Windows. I mean, if we don't embrace this speed, we risk delivering training that's basically obsolete before the student even logs in for the first module.
This acceleration lets us integrate modern, real-world problem-solving capabilities, which, that's the promise of GAI, to really augment human creativity and productivity.
That is a compelling vision, I'll grant you that. But I come at it from a different angle. The moment you use GAI tools to generate security-critical training material, and I'm talking specifically about things like the complex hands-on exercises, the custom Linux and Windows scripts mentioned in the project, you are introducing the risk of embedding known vulnerabilities or, maybe even worse, outright fabrications. These models are known to produce what's often called confabulation, some call it hallucination, where the output is just false or inaccurate or misleading. And this compromises basic information integrity. Now, in cybersecurity, precision is absolutely paramount, right? So relying on an engine that, let's be honest, struggles to distinguish fact from fiction means the curriculum itself risks embodying the very security flaws it's supposed to teach people how to counteract.
And beyond that, generating foundational content this way risks harmful bias or homogenization, which could lead to less robust sort of monoculture content in the long run. So let's look specifically at the security integrity of the output itself. How can we actually trust the resulting hands-on training materials and exercises, or those custom scripts, when we know the underlying LLMs can sometimes be prompted or tricked into producing actionable instructions for dangerous or unethical behavior? The very use of GAI, as the NIST RMF acknowledges, lowers the technical barriers for offensive cyber capabilities. Are we really confident that every single script generated by Copilot for that youth program is safe, robust, and free from dangerous, maybe latent instructions?
I see the immediate danger you're flagging. Absolutely. But I think you might be confusing a deployment risk with a fundamental flaw in the technology itself. To me, this is a governance issue. We know these models have failure modes, so developers can and frankly must employ robust guardrails and sophisticated alignment training to prevent the generation of harmful or objectionable content. I mean, the principles of the NIST risk management framework actively demand that we anticipate and threat model these exact security risks. These challenges can, and I believe must, be actively managed. That allows the innovation to proceed, but responsibly.
Right, but I have to challenge that whole premise of manageability. Guardrails are fallible. We already see sophisticated users employing techniques, people call them jailbreaking, which essentially means manipulating the prompts in clever ways to bypass the model's built-in safety controls. Now, if a student in a competition setting, or maybe more critically, an outsider, can use these kinds of manipulation methods to elicit dangerous instructions from the model underpinning the course material, well, that capability poses a direct threat to the intended safe use boundaries of the curriculum itself. You're essentially introducing a known potentially exploitable vulnerability right into the learning pipeline that's meant to build defense skills. That seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Okay, but let's circle back to the cost of not using these tools. The entire methodology of this project, its success, really hinged on creating that accelerated, streamlined workflow. Why should development teams forego the immense speed advantage that tools like Copilot and LLMs provide, especially when generating first drafts, structural outlines, initial code snippets? I mean, the project's success relied on quickly integrating modern development tools. Why give that up?
Because I just don't buy that calculation of a streamlined workflow. Not really. That theoretical speed you're talking about gets heavily mitigated, maybe even negated entirely by the necessary risk management overhead. Any responsible organization following best practices like the NIST guidance must implement extensive human review, tracking, and documentation for GAI outputs. The frameworks require organizations to set up interdisciplinary teams, greater management oversight specifically for GAI risk. This intense this process burden, it fundamentally contradicts the whole premise of rapid hands-off efficiency. That speed you're chasing, I think it's often an illusion that just dissipates the moment we apply the necessary rigor to ensure genuine integrity.
That's an interesting point, though I guess I would frame the risk a bit differently. We have to look at risk relatively, right? Especially in our domain. Cybersecurity threats evolve exponentially faster than any traditional curriculum development cycle could possibly keep up with. So the risk of delaying content creation, which means delivering a stale curriculum that fails to address current real-world threats, that risk might very well outweigh the operational risk of using managed GAI tools to quickly deliver relevant training. The goal here is the timely delivery of practical skills, and the risk of irrelevance, that's the existential threat in this context.
Timely delivery is worthless if the material itself is legally compromised. Let's pivot for a second to the deep legal vulnerability that's inherent in GAI-generated training. Any training materials designed for commercial or even widespread educational use face a severe threat from intellectual property risks. We know these foundational models are trained on massive, often unclearly sourced troves of data, potentially including copyrighted or even pirated works, like Books 3. Now, this can lead to outputs that inadvertently infringe on copyright through something called data memorization. We are potentially making the foundational IP of the entire course vulnerable to complex, costly litigation down the road.
I'm not entirely convinced that risk calculation holds as strongly today as it might have, say, a year ago. The legal landscape is definitely shifting. While, yes, we absolutely must assess market harm, courts are increasingly finding that the act of training a foundation model on a large, diverse data set is often transformative. The model isn't storing the original work for its original purpose, like reading or education. It's converting massive collections into a statistical model capable of generating new output. That statistical conversion process is arguably fundamentally different from the original work's purpose. And furthermore, we are already seeing market-based solutions emerge. Companies are actively developing licensed datasets, tools trained only on fully licensed content, particularly for things like audio and image generation. This suggests that the market itself will likely provide clean data solutions, which kind of undermines the argument that high-risk, unlicensed scraping is somehow necessary for good model performance.
But the core function here is education. We're talking about generating educational content, custom scripts for learning, homework assignments. When a model trained on copyrighted educational material then generates more educational content that shares the exact same purpose as those original works, well, that use seems, at best, modestly transformative, as some analyses put it. The output directly competes with potential licensing markets for that original material, markets that are, traditional, reasonable, or likely to be developed. The sheer scale of AI training, potentially reproducing significant parts of works, poses a substantial adverse impact on these markets. And that makes your resulting curriculum fundamentally vulnerable to IP litigation over its very source. That single risk, to my mind, should be enough to require a pause or at least extreme caution before relying on GAI for high-value foundational educational materials.
Look, this project, I believe, successfully demonstrates that the benefits of GAI for educational content creation, the speed, the scale, the immediate integration of cutting-edge tooling are simply too valuable to just ignore, especially in a dynamic domain like cybersecurity. Responsible governance, adhering to established risk management principles like NIST RMF, provides the necessary framework to manage the known security and integrity risks. This allows us to ensure the curriculum remains effective and hopefully stays ahead of the curve.
And conversely, I'd argue that the fundamental unreliability issues with GAI, ranging from confabulation and potential systemic harms like homogenization, right down to the complex and still very much unresolved IP risks, all suggest that relying on these tools for foundational cybersecurity education is, well, dangerously premature. A high-quality curriculum must prioritize verifiable, high-integrity information above the, perhaps temporary, appeal of unvetted speed.
Indeed. The application of generative AI in education, and especially in these high-stakes technical fields like cybersecurity, it really forces organizations to carefully weigh the incredible promise of radical innovation against the immediate, persistent need for verifiable security and absolute integrity. And that remains an incredibly difficult balance, I think, for any institution to achieve right now.